Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Solar Factory. It's been a while since we've done one of these. Real life has got in the way, as is want. So this has been several weeks. I think maybe even just looking at the when I published episode 7, it was back on the about 3 weeks ago now. So since then, update 6 has come out of experimental and into the early access branch. So as a result of that, I have rebuilt the plastics factory um, and linked to that, rebuilt the computer manufacturing setup, which is this guy. I've also done a bunch of other stuff. So this episode is probably going to be a bit more of a catch up and a discussion about the next big build I've got to do, which is over there. But first, let's jump back to. Let's go to. There's nothing new at home. That's exactly as it was after episode 7. No change here at all. So wait for the world to log in. There we go. So yeah, nothing's changed on that factory. Nothing has changed with the generators, nuclear generators. They're the same. I have, but the big area now is that the plastics. So this is now the new plastic thing. I'm just going to go to fly up and just go right up to give a really good air view of what this is. So this is now a pretty big area. I think that should be high enough. There we go. So this was the area that they massively changed in update 6. So I've had to move the plastic factory. They still had the oil nodes here, but they moved them around. So a lot of oil is still here. I'm tapped into 4 of them. No, more than that. 6 oil nodes in here. So there's actually one underneath there. There's one in the back corner. There's one there and there, which feeds into that corner there. There's also one there and one in that box feeds into there. So as a result of that, both the 2 back ones, they're both pure nodes. So hence why I've got 7 sets of this setup, which I'll go down to the ground, I'll go down to the floor in a moment and explain all that. And this bottom one, which I think is a normal and an impure for both these 2 sets, that now feeds into this set of 5. So each set is basically identical. So what we have is we have 3 refineries. It's actually 6 refineries you can see, but it's all doing different bits. So these 3 refineries here, if I can get down to here, is just making rubber and this heavy oil residue sort of offshoot as well. 2 of those refineries feed into these 2 directly, so one into that, one into that. This one feeds over to here. I'll explain where that goes on in a moment. That's basically excess for what I need it. The idea behind this is these 3 are producing heavy oil residue, which goes into this refinery. This refinery then turns that into fuel. That fuel is then fed back out and feeds both of these because these are using an alternative recycled plastic recipe, which needs rubber and fuel and produces 60 a minute. 60 minute per set of these 6 refineries. So each one that's doing 60. All of these are doing 60 each. So as a result of doing 60, I've got 7 down that side, 5 down this side. So 12 times 60 is 720. That's per refinery, by the way. So it's actually 12 sets and producing 120 each set. So it's 1440 plastic per minute being made in this setup. That gets fed all underground. There's a massive, really badly laid out logistics level underneath. In fact, let's jump down and have a look at it. Just to get it this fly mode. So underneath, just turn on the flashlight. So underneath we've got all of the rubber that comes out of the spare one basically goes down a line down here, goes down to that back corner there. The ones that are actually producing plastic, the ones producing rubber goes into the next one. They're underground to save space on top. And this central bit through here, through there, and I think there's another one somewhere. There's 3 rows of plastic output. If I jump up here, we'll see we've got, there's the 3 plastic runs. So you got, that's so the first, I think it's the first 3 on the left side as we're looking at it, each producing 120 each set of 3, each set of refineries. That's the one that's closest to us, this one. The middle one is the remaining 4 on that side, and then the other one is the other 5 on the right hand side. You can see that we've got so we should get around 360 through this first one, 480 through the second one, and 600 through that one. So we're pretty spot on with this, running as a very efficiently running. The rubber, as I said, comes up to here and goes into a smart splitter first, and that then goes into this goes into plastic. My bag goes into if it's overflowing. Sorry, initially it goes into here, and then if it overflows that, it goes into the Sawsum sink here. And once these 3 plastic runs, which you now see there's the measurement, the counters we were looking at before, they feed 1, 2, 3. If any of these get full, they also go into this left hand one of these, and if that eventually fills up, it would also then go into the Awesome sink, but that hasn't happened yet. So this is taking, that's full already, that's full, that's very close to getting full. Okay, what am I missing there? Oh, sorry, yep, very good. So it's getting close to being full, and this one's also close to getting full. Once each of these individuals fill up, they will then start overflowing into this guy. Now I'll go to where that goes in a moment. So here we've got oil coming from that node up here, along here, under here, and into this fuel buffer, which is basically full. That goes right along there. Opposite end has exactly the same thing, comes into the middle. So what this is, the effect of this is that this middle pipe here is always fully saturated with oil and never empties. You always want that bubble there to be full. So if we come in, we've got 1 set, 2 set, 3 set, 4, 5. So the middle one is essentially this guy. This guy should be always really full up with oil. So it's working really, really well. And it's pretty efficient. So where does all this plastic go? Well, that goes to the computer factory that we were just near the other second ago. Let's go jump to there. This is the top of it, making 15 computers a minute. At the moment, the drone port is this guy on the left here. That's what this is going to replace shortly, but that's part of the next build. So down here, let's go through this. So at the bottom, we've got the train that comes in. There's the 3 storages from this end. They go into another storage. These are all going to be basically full, as probably these are as well. Very close. Yeah. At the bottom here, we've just got all smelters. So 2 rows of 6 smelters doing copper, and the first 4 are doing iron ore. So iron ore comes in from there into here. Copper comes from there and there. And the copper is because we need copper sheets and cable for the final production setup. The iron ore is because we need screws. So we've got 3 manufacturers above us on the top level, or the second level above this one. And each of these sets of 4 constructors is basically directly feeding a manufacturer above. So it's, I think it's 200 screws. Might be 250 screws or something like that a minute. This setup makes the cable in here. And this setup here is making copper sheets, because on the next level above is where we have a set of 8 assemblers, all making circuit boards, knitting the plastic and the copper sheet, because we need 150, 149, 150 copper circuit boards a minute to feed the 3 manufacturers here. 260 screws a minute, 90 plastic, 45 cable, and 50 circuit boards. There's the plastic coming in, there's that. There is some overflow at the end here for the circuit board, but that doesn't really happen now. And there was also overflow for the plastic here in as well, but I've stopped that. That would go up to the sink, but at the moment it just goes up there, comes out here. If there's ever backfilled up from the drawing port back to here, it would I would potentially start sinking it, but that's never probably going to happen. That still takes it back to the main factory, where it basically gets stored at the moment. So that was the immediate change I made after the update 6 came to early access, because as I think I showed you in episode 7, it might have been episode 6 actually, where I showed you what the update 6 had done to the Spire coast area. Just to bring up the map is this bit here. That's the Spire coast. That's where the new production is. If we turn on train stations, there's the 2 train stations there, back at that main plastic factory. So let's jump back to there, and I'll show you where that other train ends up going. So, as I said, we've got excess rubber and excess plastic coming into here. That's already taken a load off. This goes round, does a kink around the factory in front of it, the train station in front, goes up there, hangs right, and goes to what I've now sort of renamed the area, but it is Island Way Station. So now we've got that train station comes in here. So in fact, so it basically comes along here. It basically starts there, ends there, and sort of does this zigzag pattern all the way through this area here. Comes down here, drops into here, and from here it joins. There was being plastic made here, but now the plastic just gets unloaded here and goes into a couple of belt runs and goes down, joins the main factory where it used to be before. So what I've now got here is, this is a redone aluminium ingot production line. This was being done sort of under there. That's all now not in use. I haven't got around to dismantling it, but I will do. So we've got 2 sets of refineries here. They're taking oil and bauxite and water. So bauxite comes from up that little trip thing down through this guy, comes into here. Water is basically coming from directly below. So from these 3. This makes the alumina solution and silica. The aluminium solution joins into this refinery to make aluminium scrap plus more water. X-Fix water comes back out and feeds into this setup, so that's all balancing itself pretty well at the moment. That's making the excess silica that we need to feed these 2 sets of 4 foundries, which are making aluminium ingots. They then join up there, join that back there, and then they go back and go down that run there, and there should be about 480. So we've got 478. So that's all good. That feeds back to the main factory and goes into the aluminium casing production tower. We've also got rubber that's coming out of here. There's not much using of rubber at the moment. That's pretty low, even though probably this guy's probably going to be pretty full. Yeah, there's just not much usage of rubber at the moment in the main factory. And the plastic goes down there. I've redone this setup. This used to be all on the ground. It's now up on this elevator platform. Underneath that, we've just got the 4 runs. So we've got raw quartz coming back in to feed those guys. Plastic, rubber, and aluminium ingots. And all the power is on this outside bit. So this is sort of the way I'm doing these elevated conveyor belt towers now, is through these setups. I kind of like to look at them, so that's all. So that area to the left, up through, you can just see through top there. On the back, on bit further into the inland from that, is a nitrogen gas point. Not used at the moment, but it's basically left that in place just in case I want to resume using it. So plastic comes in here along with the aluminium ingots. The aluminium ingots just go straight through, but the plastic comes into here, feeds into these two constructors. Autosave is about to kick in, and from here it makes empty canisters. Because I've tweaked this a bit as well. This was putting the sulfur, excess sulfur from these blenders, was going up to the top, which is then feeding into the sulfuric acid requirement for the blenders for the nuclear waste management stuff, but it wasn't working particularly well. So I've tweaked it, made it all just down here. So now I'm just bringing all the sulfuric acid, which is a byproduct of making the. Oh, that's not good. They should not be backlocked like that. That's interesting. I've got a miss from there. So that's now flowing into that packager, which then goes in there and then just sinks the stuff down here. This is not good. That shouldn't be backed up. The problem is I haven't quite got enough excess plastic being made at that plastic factory. To what's missing? Okay, I haven't got enough. I haven't got enough of the nuclear electromagnetic rods. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I have an issue with that I need to sort out. So the production of this stuff is going to be way down. So this makes the rods for the generators. Now, luckily, I've got a massive backlog of those, so I suspect that even though they've stopped producing them, yeah, each of those is completely backlogged. So I've got a lot of spares, so that's not a big problem. I do need to figure that out though, because I'm obviously not making enough of those rods. So I've had a couple of issues with this setup. So the other thing I did with this, as I wasn't bringing the sulfur from underneath to the top, I needed to redo the sulfur. So now I've got sulfur. Sulfur is now coming from that node there. And there's a drone port somewhere around there. Oh, there we go. So there it is. So that's bringing sulfur into that drain port, which goes into that storage facility container, feeds these two refineries, and this is now making the sulfur for that blender, that blender, that blender, and that blender, and the manual waste. When I have problems with all this setup, and while nuclear waste backs up, I then dump it into that setup over there. And I've had a bit of that recently because I've had to tweak all this stuff and it hasn't quite been properly working. So at the moment I've got quite a fair bit of excess waste in here. That's so excess waste in there. So it's got there's nothing. It's very interesting. I haven't. So the main thing that those electromagnetic rods feed is actually those that manufacturer there, which makes the plutonium rods, which then get sunk, and that's the waste management process. Um, so you can see here we've got 3.6 there. So we've got 3.6 by 4, which is 14.4. We'll also have this one's using 1.8. The big consumption will be these ones because there is 18 of them, I think. Yeah. So 18 by 4. Okay. 72. So 72 plus 14.4 plus 1.8. So we need 90 a minute with a bit of excess. So I need to go see what I'm making. Alright, that's something I'll get in a moment. So that's the setup up here. So I've tweaked this a little bit. Looks like I've got to do some more work on one of the areas I've got. So, alright, let's jump back to the other area that got changed in update 6 was the swamp area. So the swamp area is essentially this area in here. They made a sort of visual change to it, but it's not much else. I think they might have added some more nodes in, but I'm not really sure of that. So let's jump to there because that's actually got quite a bit of change made to it now. So I've made the big rebuild of a couple of areas on that one. So I'm going to go to here. So this is so this train station here brings in coal and copper ore from that train station up there. They're all there working. That's good. So they're all bring copper ore because that goes into that setup in there, plus that setup over there, which I'll jump into in a second. The first thing I've made, big change I've made, what a change I've made is I've redone the battery setup significantly. I've now doubled production of the battery production, so I'm now doing 240 batteries a minute. And that's actually, I've got a couple of production lines here, so I'm just going to jump past this first one. And we'll come back to this one in a second, just jumping over here. So we'll come back to this tower in a second. But the first one, this is making batteries. So it gets a whole bunch of bauxite. Just get rid of all this so we can see under here. Yep. So we've got two lots of bauxite coming in from there, there and there. All those three combined to feed into these two. The sulfuric acid comes from those 6 sets of packages up there, because that's been fed by 6 refineries underneath it. That's putting in 600 sulfur a minute, just under. What's meant to be targeting 600. Because in here, just going down the side here, is our 6 blenders making batteries. 40 batteries each blender, because they're overclocked to 200%. So 240. We've got these have excess water, so I've got the main production underneath here though is that this setup here is making empty canisters. So we've got copper sheets, on the other side we've got iron plates to make these empty canisters, feed into these 4 packages, which is getting rid of the excess water from the blenders above, and also that pipe brings down the blenders water from the blenders. Got a pipe run there which actually brings excess water from that refinery over there. That refinery is making aluminium scrap, which is then used to make the aluminium ingots, because the aluminium ingots are needed to make are combined into um, used to make aluminium casings in the corner here, which feeds into these 6 blenders. So um, yeah, what you can see here is the empty canisters going back. So they basically get back. They basically cycle themselves. So going through there, back through here, back to those packages and get reused again. So they're just recycling themselves. So there's no sinking of those empty canisters. They just get reused, recycled. And the water just gets sunk over there. Element solution comes up here, comes into here, and that gets split into those 6 blenders. The sulfuric acid comes up here, gets depackaged, and that's the more canisters going back for the sulfuric acid bit. And then that gets fed into these blenders. And these blenders are pretty much running efficiently. These are running pretty efficiently all the time. So as a result of that, I have got, I jump up here into the top level, 239. We should be making 240, making 240 batteries a minute. Feeds into here, goes into this sets of containers, comes in here into the new drone port. This is just taking batteries to other drone port areas. So one is, for example, I needed canisters for another setup over there, which I'll get to in a second. This is just taking the batteries required for that drone to there and coming back with extras. I've got one that takes so the next one is taking the batteries out to the gas filter setup, which is somewhere over there essentially. One takes batteries to the beams, which is in the same area. And then this one is batteries for the desert drones. Oops, let you just see battery. Which is also over the left hand side. So what does this one take it to again? Oh yeah, so that's taking the batteries over for the drones that take the computers and the heavy modular frames to the main factory. So this is just a battery distribution point at the moment, really. So there is some batteries coming out of here. That then feeds that drone port there and that drone port there. This setup next to it is making heat sinks. So heat sinks were made here as well. So they're also being made here. I didn't actually say I've got when they made the swamp changes here. I think they changed the depth of the water. I used to have water extractors sitting in these little swamp pondy things, but that seemed to have stopped once they put in the new setup. So I've got the water required for. Oh, that's not what they're going through there. Sure, that's there. Get rid of that. Cool. Those 5 refineries there all need water, so they're all coming from that setup over there. And you can see I've got the same sort of beam pillars in between. I will eventually get that covered, but I haven't done it yet. And a recent addition was to add this extra bit on the side. I've also put lights in each one of them, so it's all well lit up. So if I just go set time and make it 11 o'clock at night, I think this looks pretty cool. In fact, if we go down the other side with the lights, they're wall-mounted lights, and the middle one is just a ceiling light. So we just come across this other. Turn off my flashlight. I think it looks pretty cool. And I didn't realise those things glowed in the dark until later on. But yeah, I think this looks pretty cool. So that's going to be sort of the design going forward as well. Will be to put that light setup in place. So added on to this, as I said, this drone port was a separate sort of construction before, hence why it's got the wall in there. I then sort of attached it, and then to make it look like it would actually be structurally sound, I did this thing out the side there to sort of hold on to it, these beams in the middle, and then put this out the other side to sort of mean that it does look kind of like that's holding it up kind of thing in the left bit, and that's sort of balancing it out. Not really sure it really makes architectural sense, but I think it looks kind of cool. And then I did a similar thing with this one. So this is the tower, or the sort of production area that's making heat sinks. So at the very bottom, we've got more bauxite coming in and making aluminium scrap, well, aluminium solution, sorry. We've got this making aluminium scrap, so these four feed to these two to make scrap. We've got excess water up that pipe there. And this is where I didn't have the ability to make more empty canisters like I did with that setup. Hence why I've got a drone port here bringing empty canisters from another part of another factory I built. So that's just getting rid of the water from this setup. So on here we've got this is all making aluminium ingots. It's just making ingots, and over here we've got excess silica that we need to make, because up top we are making using those aluminium ingots. Goes into that set of here tower storage containers here, which I think will probably be. I thought they might be empty by now, but they're not. That's alright. Because they get fed into these assemblers, which gets combined with the ingots to make alkyd sheeting, which goes into ultimately gets fed into this two assemblers, which are making heat sinks along with the copper sheets. That is all this setup is for. That then feeds up there, and that goes on to this drain port, which takes it to the generators area, which is where they're used. Likewise, on the other side, I'm using excess. I'm making 720 aluminium ingots a minute with this setup just there. It's targeting 720. It's making 719 at the moment. So I've got a lot of excess aluminium ingots. So there's only 150 used in this setup for the heat sinks. So I'm now using, along with some copper sheets, I'm just making alkyd sheeting, because I need alkyd sheeting to be drone to the main factory, which is what this is doing, to feed the heat sink production that's at the main factory, which then gets put into, I think it's the cooling system or the fuse module. I can't remember which one it is now. So that's going to be making 300, so we're pretty much spot on, which is good. And that's making 330 of those, which is pretty also spot on. I need 24 a minute in that area, but only making 30, so there's a bit of an excess being made as well, which is fine. Yeah, so that's bringing in canisters. So that's probably that's actually, very briefly, you might have spoken it at the where we first started, because that's next to the computers. In the desert, that's making those empty canisters. So we've got copper sheet matching on the right there, iron plate there, into a series of assemblers. And because I was actually needing so much of these empty canisters, there's actually two drone ports here. It's probably actually making too much, so I probably need to tweak this down a bit. Anyway, that's good enough to make two more drone ports if I need empty canisters elsewhere, because I think I'm making, and the rest, if it was excess, it'd go into here and then go into that series of containers, and ultimately it would sink excess. Which I think I have got a little more full. I think I'm making, it's around 300 or 600. Okay. So I probably need to rebalance that a bit. So I think each one makes 60. Yeah, each one makes 60. So I'm making 600. I only need 360 for that other area. So I'm actually making way more, but I think I need to readjust. What have I got here? So empty canister. Okay, so that's probably why. Okay, need to change that a bit. All right, that's cool. That will do for episode 8. I'll be back in a couple of weeks with episode 9, which will be about the next big build I've got to do, which is this heavy modular frame set up to right of where we are now. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.